Despite warnings from the Justice Department that releasing a controversial memo alleging government surveillance abuse would be extraordinarily reckless, Republicans appear to be moving closer to doing just that. They describe the alleged conduct as alarming. And according to unconfirmed reporting by the Daily Beast website, the memo specifically names FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, and former FBI Director James Comey. Chris Stewart is a Republican congressman from Utah, member of the House Intelligence Committee, so he would have had a hand in putting this memo together. Great to have you with us tonight, sir.
Good evening. Good to be with you.
I know that you must be careful about the information that is in the memo before it's released, and I know there's quite a debate over that, but can you confirm for us any of those names and whether they would be relevant and part of the memo?
You know, I'd rather not. We'll wait and see, but I can tell you this. We intend to release a memo. I certainly intend to vote for it. I don't know any Republican members of the committee who aren't going to vote to release this memo, and we should release this memo. And it's so ironic to me, the Justice Department coming to us. They treat us like we're children, like we have to come to them, Mom and Dad, can we get your permission to do this? We are the people's house. We have a constitutional duty and a constitutional right to make these decisions. This is a House investigation. And from the Department of Justice, who's been stonewalling us for months and months, even in the face of a subpoena, to come to us and say, well, don't release it till we review it, and hopefully I think they would want to stop us from releasing it. We're just not going to do that. The American people deserve to know the contents of what this memo has.
So does the memo, as it's prepared now, have classified information? Is it something that is available to release without redactions to the American people?
Very close to it. We actually wrote it with the expectation that we would try to release it if possible. And so there's very little. I mean, I would not release the memo as it currently stands. There's a few phrases, a few lines that I think we would want to redact. But it's very close to something that we could release anyway. And by the way, as a former Air Force pilot, I'm used to dealing with some of the most classified information that there is in the United States government. And this memo doesn't come close to that level of sensitivity. This is something that when people read it, they'll go, of course this should have been released. Of course we have a right to know this. It doesn't reveal classified sources or methods in any way.
Well, and we talked about how some have called it alarming. I know Congressman Meadows has said he almost wished he hadn't read it because it was kind of depressing to him that this would happen in the United States. Now, on the other side of the aisle, you have a Democrat, Congressman Mark Pocan, out of Wisconsin, who says, yeah, you should release it. But this is his take. He says, I've read the so-called classified memo, and I can assure you that it is all smoke and no fire. I, too, call for its release to once and for all end the FBI witch hunt. So you got a Democrat saying he wants you to put it out there, too, but for very different reasons.
Yeah, well, good for him. But I tell you what, we'll let people have their own judgment on this. But it's hard for me to imagine anyone reading this memo and just shrugging their shoulders and say, oh, that's no big deal. I assure you that most people will not. Now, maybe some very partisan people will, people who, the same people, frankly, who don't want us to release it. But why in the world would any Democrat or any Republican not want transparency? Since when is the Democratic Party not for transparency? And again, we look forward to American people having access to this and letting them decide for themselves whether they think it's important or not.
Well, and you've said or hinted at the fact that you think there are other things as part of this investigation you also find troubling, aside from what's contained in this memo, that you also think the American people need to know about. Can you tell us anything about that and whether that information might ultimately be released as well?
Oh, my gosh. To say that I'm troubled by some other stuff is an enormous understatement. This is just the beginning of a report that we want to give to the American people that deal with incredibly troubling, and I try to soften my language, by the way. I think sometimes there's a little too much bluster, a little too much drama. But this is incredibly troubling. And I'm not talking about just this memo. I'm talking about the report overall that we're eventually going to have to release to the American people. And it deals with the politicalization of agencies that just shouldn't be. And I'm not talking about the agency as an entirety. I'm talking about very senior, a few very senior people within the Department of Justice, the FBI, and in some cases, the CIA. Why in the world would these things be made into the political arm of one party or the other? And it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. That should be troubling to you. It should be troubling to every American to think that that might have happened.
Very quickly, I want to ask you, obviously the ranking member, Adam Schiff, has said that Democrats are preparing their own memo. He says it's to point out the GOP's misleading characterization of what you put in that memo and essentially saying that you're doing a disservice to the good people of the FBI. My assumption is you're not trying to sweep up everyone who works at the agency.
Well, of course not, and I look forward to reading this memo. But this, when I say this memo, I'm talking about the Democratic members of the committee are putting forward. Look, this memo that we're going to release is very straightforward. It's very factual. It's not emotional. We draw no conclusions. We allow the reader to draw their own conclusions. And if they want to put forward something else that rebuts that, I look forward to reading it. But once again, facts are the facts, and all we do is lay out the facts. And I don't know what they could possibly put forward to refute that. It'll be interesting to see. I actually am looking forward to it because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, talk about making a puzzle and turning it upside down. I think that's what they're going to have to do with this thing.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing both in due time. Congressman Stewart, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Stu. Good to be with you.